In today's episode of An Empire in Decline, we're going to talk about why Americans are deciding not to have kids. I'll be reacting to a video by CNBC and offering my feedback.
We got married fairly young, and we both just decided for many reasons we didn't want kids. And then at some point we heard the acronym DINK, and I think just really fell in love with it.
There are more Americans that are deciding not to have children, and it's purposeful.
This new trend has led to the rise of a new type of household, more commonly referred to as DINKs, dual income, no kids.
Oh yeah, dual income, no kids, that's perfect for us. That's absolutely right.
Children are the death of net worth.
This is just a start, but the fact that Americans are starting to not have kids, I think, is going to have a massive effect on the ability for the American empire to continue to grow, right? Because if Americans are no longer having kids, we're going to have to start allowing more and more immigrants in order to take some of those jobs that would normally be taken by Americans, right? So again,
Crude, but honestly very true.
This household configuration of dual income partners living alone without children is on the rise. In 2022, it was around 43% of households, and that's about a 7% increase from a decade previously.
In 2022, 43% of Americans surveyed said they'd want to get married, but just a little more than a quarter said they were sure about wanting children.
The term DINK is...
This has been a trend ever since the baby boomer generation, right? The baby boomers were having a lot of kids, and a single person could support a full household, have two kids, have the white picket fence house, a dog, and the stay-at-home wife, right? And then now in the 1980s, with the women's rights movements and all this civil rights movements, women started entering the workforce, debt continued to spiral, and now we are entering the third stage where men and women are working, but they're no longer having kids, right? In the second stage, the men and the woman were working, but they would still have kids.
Becoming more prominent now because of financial challenges, and they see children as just another financial challenge that maybe they don't want to take on.
So what's it like to live with a dual income and no children? And will it be the future of American households? According to a 2023 survey of DINKs, finance played a major role in their decision to not have children. More than a quarter of respondents said they simply aren't able to financially support a child at the moment.
When we advise clients about having children, we honestly don't even give them the full real details and the real numbers. It's one of those things, if you actually see the math of it all, it might make you decide to not have children.
It costs a family an estimated $310,605 to raise a child born in 2015 to age 18, adjusted for higher future inflation.
That is insane. $300,000 per kid. I mean, nowadays people can't even afford homes, and now the cost of living is going up. And if each kid costs you $300,000, I can see why people are not deciding not to have kids anymore.
And that doesn't even include the cost of college.
So if you look at inflation within the child care market, it surpasses general overall inflation within the economy.
Some couples are contemplating having children at the same time that they're still paying off student loans that they incurred when they were 18 to 22 years old.
One of my very closest friends, she's been struggling with the reality that the take-home pay she makes is about equal to what childcare would be. That's a really hard position to be in.
I mean, if people have like remote jobs, I guess it could be a bit more affordable, right? Where if both parents are working remote, or if one parent is working remote, you don't have to go and have those excess costs of, hiring a babysitter or sending the kid to daycare. But as of 2022, I think most companies are now requiring their workers or their employees to go back to return to the office, right? To promote the work culture or work environment. So again, that is making the ability to have kids unfeasible, right? If most Americans are earning like $50,000 to $60,000, or maybe even less, 40, 30, and the total household income is about 80, 90,000, and half of that goes to fund the daycare, right? Or to hire the babysitter, then it makes it a bit more complicated to have kids. And that's why a lot of people are deciding not to have kids.
Seeing our friends really struggle with that balancing act has, I think, made me appreciate the flexibility that we have financially because we don't have children.
Besides saving on childcare, DINKs can also fully reap the benefits of combining their finances.
To look at both of our incomes coming in and see how we're able to handle all of that because we don't have extra finances with a child, it's much more comfortable. We get to focus more on the things that we want to do and saving a lot of that money for the future, and worry less about the day-to-day finances of the house and our bills.
Money isn't the only expense that DINKs can save on.
The free time is actually one of the biggest things for me. So we built me a little office / bedroom out here. We definitely have some more expensive hobbies. I build mechanical keyboards, like computer keyboards, in my spare time, and just parts and stuff for that can be very expensive.
Not having children has given us the freedom to pursue other things.
If Americans ultimately decide not to have kids, that's going to be a further divide in the country. You're going to see more and more immigrants have to come into the country because those jobs that were normally taken by like actual Americans are now going to be taken by immigrants because there isn't a large enough American population or a youthful young American population to replace those jobs. So they're going to have immigrants come in. It's going to have a much longer effect on the empire at large, right? Even the military services are going to have a lot more immigrants. And if you look at the way the Roman Empire fell, towards its later stages, they were kind of going through a similar situation where they were no longer having kids, and their army was full of it was a conscript army of basically immigrants, right? And the issue with the immigrant conscript army is that those people are not loyal to the country. They have no ties to the country. And when things ultimately did go south in ancient Rome, those soldiers left or even joined the other side and helped in the rebellion. So Americans deciding not to have kids is going to have a much, much larger impact on the country as time goes on, and we're forced to have more and more immigrants come in, illegals, et cetera, et cetera.
Remodeling our home. I'm a beekeeper.
I'm really handy and I like doing stuff around the house. I wouldn't have the time to just do that after work if I feel like it, if I had, a child to care for.
Fewer expenses leave DINKs with more disposable income to play with.
Disposable income is power, it's stability, and for many couples, it's security.
The security that having, 6 months of income saved for emergencies gives you, that security was so helpful to us during COVID when I was out of work for 6 months.
Let's have like a smaller tractor style. Next year, we're going to get a zero.
We have more tolerance for chaos, I think, because of our savings. Our new savings goal, which is like our shoot for the stars and hit the moon kind of is saving $4,000 a month.
According to census data, DINKs can save 9% more for retirement each year compared to dual income couples with children. Another 2021 study found that childless adults aged 55 and older had a personal median net worth of $153,900, compared to $130,400 for biological parents.
If you have $1 and if you have to choose how to use it, a DINK can prioritize savings, retirements, investments, both in the equities market as well as things like real estate or second properties.
The hardest part of investing is just having the cash to do it. And so when you don't have your cash going to expenses that are related to children, that cash can go into those investment goals.
Investing in our early 20s, I feel really safe because we have this strong nest egg of ETFs that are accessible and fairly liquid. And then we also have...
Yeah, but you're saving or you're investing for, I guess, retirement. You're going to have no offspring to pass that wealth on to, right? I mean, it makes sense in the short term to get out and get more of your time back and to save for retirement, but ultimately there's no such thing as generational wealth, right? With DINKs, if you're not having any kids, where is that money going to go? It's just going to go back to the government when you die.
Our long-term savings, which are, tied up in IRAs, we can choose what our aging years look like because we've saved to plan for that eventuality.
It is well documented that the younger you are when you start your savings and your retirement portfolio, the better off you are in the long run in terms of aggregate savings and your ability to accrue savings and wealth.
Just take the $310,605 it would take for a middle-income married family to raise a child. While child expenses can vary significantly by age and location, that could easily represent more than $15,000 in otherwise investable funds per year. Consider the power of annually compounding interest, and that $15,000 per year can grow to more than $500,000 in just 18 years, assuming 7% annual returns. This nest egg could also help DINKs secure more assets for themselves.
Dual earner adults living together who both have jobs and have been saving are really able to put a heftier, relatively large down payment on a home, which then reduces their monthly mortgage and has all of these other benefits. You're paying less interest over the long run.
I was fortunate enough to have a good little nest egg gifted to me by my grandparents, and that helped us buy our first house. But then from there, living in that
again, goes back to my point, right? He got money from his grandparents because they're from the older generation and they had kids and then they had kids and so on. But in this situation, in the situation of the DINKs, there is no such thing as generational wealth. They are going to consume all of that money, or if there's anything left over, it's just going to end up going back to the government. I don't know what their plan would be, but I mean, most people pass their wealth on to their kids, and if you have no kids, well, that money just goes back to Uncle Sam, I guess.
that house, living in a place with a lower cost of living like Utah, having dual income helped us build all this savings so that when we sold that home and moved to Massachusetts, we had an even larger nest egg that allowed us to buy a more expensive home in a higher cost of living area. I'm not totally sure where we would be if we had a child as well.
That extends beyond just purchasing a home. There are lots of big item, big ticket investments that we tend to make earlier on in adulthood. To the extent that we can pay as much of it as possible up front, that does have a rippling benefit for us as we age.
But the rise of DINKs isn't such great news for the economy as a whole. Historically, lower birth rates have been associated with slower economic growth. And critical social programs such as Social Security depend heavily on population growth.
We shouldn't strive.
That was one thing I actually had not thought of, right? Is that a lot of the Social Security income that the older generations, the baby boomers and whatnot, are getting is funded by the backs of the younger generation. So if people stop having kids, then that Social Security um, vault is going to get depleted very quickly.
To have a generation of young adults that are not reproducing, that would not be healthy for society. It wouldn't be healthy for the economy. It wouldn't be healthy for us as we age. So there are a lot of reasons why we do want to take investments in the next generation seriously.
For DINKs, the biggest challenges are often not financial.
And I think we freaked a lot of people out when we were just a young married couple, and that was all. There was no baby afterwards. I had family members asking if something was wrong because it's been 5 years of a young, healthy couple not producing a child.
I think that there is a self-care aspect that is minimized when you're a DINK. So there are many mom groups or, daddy-daughter dances. There aren't groups for, hey, I'm a professional woman and I just want to go home and read a book and take care of myself tonight.
I think on the other side of that, there can be times where in certain circumstances and circles, it's harder to make friends.
There is also the potential for more financial responsibility from other family members.
There could be additional pressure as DINKs get older for people within their family to assume that they can take care of certain obligations. For example, if you have an aging parent, DINKs might be the ones that are relied upon because it's presumed you have disposable income or you have disposable time to take on these responsibilities.
According to experts, the number...
A lot of the super wealthy Elon Musks, like the oligarchs of the world, say that you should have a kid as soon as possible, as early as possible, but they don't take into consideration that a lot of people are in debt and they can't afford to have kids, right? And that's just the nature of the United States. Everything is becoming more and more expensive. People can't have kids. So these big, wealthy oligarchs just have to deal with it.
Number one advice for DINKs is to prioritize savings and figure out clear goals for the future.
If anybody is considering becoming a DINK, as a financial planner, I highly recommend that strategy. I recommend it to my clients. When my clients tell me that's an intentional choice they're going to make, I am a big fan of it.
With that disposable income, make a budget. How do you want to spend it? Make sure you put aside some money for fun, but also make sure you put aside some money for investments, and they can be traditional or non-traditional investments, and then revisit it annually to make sure it still makes sense.
I think if you're considering not having children in your life, make sure your partner's on the same page as you and that you have confidence in that value in isolation without your partner too.
Yeah. Don't go into the DINK lifestyle just like, I don't have kids, so I just have more money and can do whatever. It still takes the work of planning for your future, putting money away. If you're not going to have kids, make sure you still save money for your future because the world is a weird place right now and who knows what it's going to be like in another 30, 40 years when we go to retire.
People not having kids, by the way, is usually a situation you see in economies or countries that are in decline. You go and you travel to growing economies outside of China because China kind of messed up with the one-child policy that they introduced. So they trained their population to get used to not having kids. But in India, in Malaysia, in Thailand, in Indonesia, in Pakistan, all these countries, people are having kids. They're still having kids. So, this is a problem that is unique to developed countries that are kind of on the decline, right? Whether it's Western Europe or it's Japan, like the G7 countries, or the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. Those are the countries that we're really seeing this trend in.